जनकात्मजायै नमोस्तु रुद्रेन्द्रयमानिलेभ्यः नमोस्तु चन्द्रार्कमरुद्गणेभ्यः कञ्जातपत्रायतलोचनाय कर्णावतंसोज्ज्वलकुण्डलाय कारुण्यपात्राय सुवंशजाय नमोस्तु रामाय सलक्ष्मणाय संसक्तदिव्यायुधकार्मुकाय समुद्रगर्वापहरायुधाय सुग्रीवमित्राय सुरारिहन्त्रे नमोस्तु रामाय सलक्ष्मणाय पीताम्बरालङ्कृतमध्यकाय पितामहेन्द्राय अमरवन्दिताय पित्रे स्वभक्ताय जनस्य मात्रे नमोस्तु रामाय सलक्ष्मणाय नमो नमस्ते अखिलपूजिताय नमो नमस्तेन्दुनिवाननाय नमो नमस्ते रघुवंशजाय नमोस्तु रामाय सलक्ष्मणाय बुद्धिर्बलं यशोधैर्यं निर्भयत्वमरोगिता अजाड्यं वाक्पटुत्वं च हनुमत्स्मरणात् भवेत्। राम 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 राम। ओम श्री गणेश शारदा गुरुभ्यो नमः। श्री शिवाय गुरवे नमः। राम राम राम। Sanatana Dharma as a faith is not the same as any other religion. Usually when it is presented as a way of life by senior scholars like Radhakrishnan and so forth, it was a statement made as what is called in the Shastra as Vyatireka. Anvaya and Vyatireka, they are technical terms. Vyatireka means to distinguish. So in order to distinguish Hinduism or Sanatana Dharma from other faiths, assuming that Sanatana Dharma was not at all a faith, or it were not at all a religion, and it was only a way of life, it would mean that all these privileges that are available to religions and religious institutions, it would not be available to the followers of Sanatana Dharma. So the concept of faith or religion, even the word religion, as we understand it today, it is a notion which has been imported from the West. In the West, basically in the Judeo-Abrahamic traditions, that are not only practiced by the majority of the world population, they are all supported and sponsored by governments and institutions like the Vatican. And they are very different from what we think as the Sanatana Dharma. And any Hindu or a follower of Sanatana Dharma, he has never deemed it fit to give his kulacharas, anushtanas, practices, which is his way of life. He did not want it to put it in a certain bracket of a certain faith or a religion until he or she was forced to take up it as his identity. And once you are forced to identify yourself, you want to go with this dharmic identity or this Indic identity or this Hindu identity, which is all the same in the mind of a true practitioner of Sanatana Dharma, which is a universal way of a life of ideas, of Dharma. So there is a story which somewhat tells the difference between Sanatana Dharma and other Shraddhas or faiths or religions. So in a certain village, there was a big, huge, giant tree wherein a creeper started crawling up, and it went around the bark of the tree. In the meanwhile, the tree was very hospitable, and it was tolerating this creeper. In a short while, this creeper grew so much that it covered the entire tree. And it started laughing at the tree. See, I have grown so vast. I'm majority now. And you have not even grown anything. You are very small. The giant tree smiled and replied calmly but firmly, I have seen hundreds of creepers in my lifetime. Each creeper before you said the same thing. I do not know how should I answer or what I say to you. And then he remained silent with a smile. The Sanatana Dharma is like this tree in relation to other faiths of West or this Judo-Abrahamic traditions. The Sanatana Dharma is a universal way of life. It's an ideal. That is the meaning of Dharma, an Adarsha. And this is beautifully expressed in a phrase which is found in every courtroom of justice in Bharata. And that phrase is Satyameva Jayate. Satyameva Jayate Nanrutam. It's a part of a mantra of the famous Mundaka Upanishad. No other race in the world ever tapped so gracefully the pursuit of truth, of Satyam, for the purpose of philosophical exposition, as the ancient Hindu sages, like you find in this phrase of the Mundaka Upanishad. Sri Shankaracharya raises this question, this Purva Paksha of Satyam raised in Mundaka Upanishad, in the Shankara Bhashyam. Kim Satyam? What is this truth? He asked this question, and in reply to his question that he himself raised as Purva Paksha, he says, Bhutahitam Satyam. It means that the truth or truthfulness that is spoken with the intent, with tatparyam of the well-being of Bhutam, Bhutani, of all the living beings. That is Satya. And again, to another question that is raised, Ko Dharmaha? Adi Shankara says, Abhimato yas shishtanam nijakulinam. It means that dharma is that which is determined by the elders and by the learned people in the community, one's own community, nijakulinam. So Sanatana Dharma is clearly presented in this mantra. Satyameva jayate nanrutam satyena pantha vitato devayana. That is the sixth mantra of the third chapter of the Mundaka Upanishad. Yenakraman rishayaha aptakamaha yat tatra satyasya param nidhanam. That is a full mantra. Satyameva jayate nanritam. Truth alone survives, like the tree. Truth alone wins. Tadeva jayate. Na anritam, not falsehood. Na anritam. Na ritam na. By satyam, by truth, the devayanaha. Yana means path. Devayanaha, the path of the devas. Vitataha, they are widened. It is not cringy. It is vitatam. That by which the rishi, this mantra drishta, the seer of truth, travel on, devayanaha, aptakamaha, having nothing more to wish, they get to that truth, the highest, the satyam, which is attained by truth. And Shankara in his Bhashya, when he analyzes this mantra, he analyzes the significance of these words. Satyam, Anrutam, Dharma, Ritam, na Ritam is Anrutam. Rita, Satya and Dharma. These brings out clearly the fundamental basis of Sanatana Dharma, which indeed is the ideal for any individual, not only in a certain geographical place. Whoever is in the path, a seeker of truth in this universe, they have to follow these three. Ritam is, the word Ritam is the unseen. Agum sasya yishad vasurandarikshasad dhota vedishad adidirturo nasad rasad varasad ratasad yomasad apcha goja rutaja rutam bruhat. That is the unseen. It is an intimate experience, a mental perception which is understood intimately as anubhuti, as the realization of one's own. That is Ritam. So it is manasa manute. It is not seen. And Satyam can be expressed. The exact true expression in words through way of speech. And third phrase, Dharma, is observance, is the anushtanam, conduct of life, of truth. So Ritam is an insight. It is expressed by him truly through the words, and it is transformed in action. So in short, Sanatana Dharma is Ritam, truth in thought, and Satyam, truth in words, and Dharma, truth in action. Kayena manasa vacha Satyam, that is Sanatana Dharma. And Sanatana Dharma is explained in three basic textbooks. And this group of texts of scriptural authority, of Shruti Pramana, they are called as Prasthanatrayam. And Upanishad, it is one of the three basic texts in Sanatana Dharma. And the Upanishad is called as Shruti Prasthana because it was not written, it was heard. It is part of Vedas. The other two textbooks are Bhagavad Gita and Brahma Sutras. So these are the three: Upanishads, Gita, Brahma Sutra. The Gita is called as Smriti Prasthana. Manusmriti, Parashara Smriti, all the Smritis join the Gita in that. Gita is on the top. And Brahma Sutra is called as Yukti or Tarka Prasthana. Logical treatise. And Upanishad is Shruti Prasthanam. Upanishads are fundamental texts, the Pramana Granthas. While Brahma Sutras, they taught the language of logic. And the Gita deals basically with the translation of the Vedic vision of how to conduct our day-to-day life. And Narayaniyam is a summary of all this, of the Sanatana Dharma, of Prasthanatraya. The very first word of Bhagavad Gita is Dharma. Dharma Kshetre Kurukshetre. That's the very first phrase. So it starts with Dharma. And the last verse of the Gita, which is called as Ekasloki Gita, that is, if you don't have time, you can just read that one verse and get the benefit of the Gita. It ends, Yatra Yogeshwara Krishnaha Dhruva Nitir Matir Mama. So the Gita starts with the word Dharma and it ends with the word Mama, meaning Mama Dharma. Our Dharma, that is the subject matter of Gita. But Narayaniyam, it presents the result, the experience. If you practice the Dharma which is enshrined in the Upanishad, or the Gita which is the essence of Upanishad, Sarvo Upanishado Gavaha, Dugdham Gita Amrutam, it's the essence, the milk of Upanishads. If you practice that, Mama Dharma, what do you get? That is what is explained in Narayaniyam. If you look at the first word of Narayaniyam, it is Sandram. That's how Narayaniyam starts. Sandra Nanda Vabodhatmakam Anupamitam Kala Desha Vadibhyam. So it starts with the word Sandram. Sandram means nibidam, dense, which is not like puny and trivial, which is very unlimited. That's the meaning of Sandram. In depth, which can never be destroyed. Sanatanam. And the last word of Narayaniyam is Dvedha Narayaniyam. This Narayaniyam is meaningful Dvedha in two ways. Why? Because it is written by Narayana Bhattatiri, and it is written for Narayana, for Parameshwara, for Sri Krishna, for Guru Ayappa. And then he ends, Ayurarogya Saukhyam Yaha Kurutat. May it give you, the reader, the listener, what? Ayuhu Arogyam Saukhyam. Ayuhu is this body, lifespan. Arogyam is mental health. There cannot be any sadness for a Krishna Bhakta, for a Bhakta of Guru Ayappa. Then Saukhyam. Saukhyam means moksha. So the first word is Sandram and the last word is Saukhyam. That is what Narayaniyam gives. It gives immense pleasure, which is nothing but moksha. So that is the subject matter. It is a summary of Sanatana Dharma in 1036 verses. It's a very interesting work which talks about the facets of Sanatana Dharma in interesting ways, through stories, and addressing every verse to Krishna, looking at him. And Narayaniyam is about the human quest of happiness, of Satyam, that is gained by this Apti of Atmajnanam, of self-knowledge. And what is that self? What is that Atma? Shankara says in Dakshinamurti Ashtakam, Ahamityantas Purantam Sada. Ramana also says in Upadesharam, Aham iti sakshat Atma Rupena Bhati. Aham iti sakshat Atma. That is Atma. Atma is that which throbs inside your body, mind, senses as Aham. That I am, that feeling, that experience, that intimate experience, that is Atma. And that Atma is defined a very clear logical definition as enshrined in Brahma Sutras that is given in the opening statement of Narayaniyam. And what is the opening statement of Narayaniyam? Atmakam. That is the opening statement. That is the word, Atmakam. That is the root word. And then it has got three adjectives. Chandra, Ananda, Avabodha, Atmakam. Atma is nothing but Sandra, Ananda, and Avabodha. Sandra means Nibidham, dense. Ananda means joyful. Avabodham means aware, bodham. So a joyful, awareful being is Atma. That is the definition of Atma. This perfectly describes, without any flaw, logically, what the self is. And we are all selves, we are all Atmas. And so we are all this joyful self, this awareful being which is not limited by any ignorance. That is what we are. That is the very description of Atma or ourselves. And Srimad Narayaniyam makes this lucid observations throughout this first verse. All those adjectives are to define Atma and Bhagavan. That awareful being, that is the very description of Atma that this Narayaniyam is talking about. And this Narayaniyam is said to be the concise summary of Srimad Bhagavatam, the Bhagavata Mahapurana, which again starts with Satyam Param Dhimahi, the pursuit of truth, the Satyam. Again, it's also a very detailed account of Sri Mahavishnu, Lord Sri Krishna, and his avatars, various avatars, which have come to protect Dharma, Sanatana Dharma. And here the poet Bhattadiri, he has marvelously captured the essence of Bhagavatam, which is the essence of Vedas. Bhagavatam says that Nigama Kalpataror Gelitam Phalam. Bhagavatam is the essence of Vedas, and Narayaniyam is the essence of Bhagavatam, which again is the subject matter of the Upanishads. That is this description of this Brahman, the supreme power, the prime mover, referred to as Brahman by the Upanishads, which is the prime cause and creation of this universe. Janmadhyasya yataha. That is how Bhagavatam starts. And Brahman is defined as avabodha. Like the Upanishad says, prajnanam brahma. The self-awareness. That is the definition of Brahman, which is presented by Bhattadiri. Why do we need this self-awareness? According to Ramana Maharshi, anyone who is self-aware is not capable of making a mistake. If you are aware, you cannot make a mistake. Because no mistakes are ever deliberate. Nobody becomes deliberately passionate or angry. It is all shrouded in darkness, the beginning of Kama. Kamastadagre samavartadadhi manaso reta prathama yadasit. The Kama is seminal to the mind. Ka means darkness, Ma means light. That is how desire is. It comes from the subconscious, from the darkness, and manifests as light, as a want, which you cannot get away from. So they are all product of ignorance and conditionings. And this being the case, all that one can do is to try to retain a high degree of awareness. Be attentive to one's mind. Then only you can identify the cause of everything that the Upanishad presents as self-ignorance. And one should do whatever is necessary to eliminate the very root of this ignorance. It is extremely necessary to identify one's problem properly in order to solve it. Therefore, sincerity of purpose. That is a natural prerequisite to gain adhikara prapti. It's a natural prerequisite in this pursuit of self. Till then, not only you will have to be patient, saburi, as they say, and you have to have that shraddha. But our teachers, like Narayana Bhattagiri, like our great gurus, sages, they have remained patient with us, again and again talking this in various ways. Because they know clearly what kind of pain one has to go through in this path of self-discovery, in this pursuit of truth. This is why the karma kanda, or the process of right conduct, correct action, that is presented in the Vedas. They are 90% of the Vedic literature. If you go through the Yajurveda, Ishetvorjetva Vayavastho Vayavastadevovas Savita Prarpayadu Sreshtatamaya Karmani. That's how it starts. It starts with the word Ishetva. Why? Sreshtatamaya Karmani. So that our actions can be noble. The word Ishetva, Ishetve Dichinati. It is a mantra for Darbaharanam. When you cut a small grass, you are requesting the grass. Birhdeva Sadanam Dami. Oh Darba grass, I am cutting you for making a bed for the deity. Deva Sadanam. So that my Ganesha can come and see the sadhanam. So the Vedas are filled with these prayerful phrases. And if you read an English translation written by some Keith who have no value to find the true meaning of this Vedic tradition, you will see it as some gibberish. That's why we have to be very careful in the study of the Vedas. The Maharshis in the Karma Kanda of the Vedas, they present to humanity the way of Purnatvam, holistic living. And these karmas, they purify. Eventually, they culminate into jnanam. Sarvam karmakhilam partha jnane parisamapyade. That is the promise of Krishna. Any karma you do, Vedic karma if it is, it will definitely end up in jnana. Krishna says that karmano hyapi bodhavyam bodhavyam cha vikarmanaha akarmanascha bodhavyam gaha karmanam gatihi. Karma is a very complicated subject, Arjuna, so be deliberate, know it very well before starting to act. The Chandi also says that, Devi Mahatmyam, Jnatva prarabhya kurvita akurvano vinashyati. Devi says that to Markandeya Maharshi. Know me very well before you start to perform. Hence, Karmakanda is very elaborate because these karmas eventually are supposed to culminate into Atma Jnanam, which is presented by the Upanishad, the Vedic part that deal with Jnanam. The Brahmavadins, they deal with this Jnanam. And they take into consideration the body, mind, intellect, and also that dimension which is invisible, which transcends the body, mind, and senses. It helps bring out the very best. These karmas, if you perform it properly, It creates Shuddhi and brings the very best out of you. It brings the devotee out of you. Grounding you in Dharma, which is Sanatana, which is eternal truth, eternal ideal of life. And it tunes us with rhythm, this cosmic harmony, Ritam Brihat, as the Vedas says. And the Vedas help create a truly complete, integrated, and dynamic person who becomes a devotee. And that kind of person is this Narayana Bhattadiri, a Vedic scholar, but full of bhakti. Because that mind alone can understand the self hidden in this body, mind, sense complex. And this pursuit has to be done happily. Nobody should force you to do this. It has to be done in an atmosphere, in an ecosystem of complete freedom. Without any insecurity. You cannot put a sword on the head and do this. There cannot be any fearful, forceful imposition of Atmajnanam. So one cannot ignore this Jnanam, this Atmajnanam, to get fulfillment in karmas, which is the commonplace religion. This Vedanta or philosophy is comparable to science. While the rituals, karmakanda or religion, that's like technology. That's why people are calling it names, inner engineering, art of living. They have coined these labels. Karmakanda is nothing but this application of this scientific knowledge of Vedanta for practical purposes. That is what this Karmakanda does. Thus helping us translate these tenets into our day-to-day living. And the world will indeed be a better place to live if such attention, such awareness, such prayerfulness is spread all over our day-to-day transactions. Vivahara, Vyavaharikam. So the supreme power, this Parabrahman, that is presented in the Vedas as the prime cause for creation. That is why it is referred to as Brahman. It is another name for Bhagavan. And out of immense compassion, this Brahman manifests as Bhagavan. Guru Ayappan is nothing but Brahma Tattvam, according to the first verse of Narayaniyam. Sakshat Brahma Tattvam. And why does this Brahman do this? Because of Karuna. Upasakanam siddhyartam brahmano rupakalpana. That's what the Upanishad says. Upasakanam siddhyartam. For people who are after this Brahman, who does upasana, who love it. And to fulfill them, it takes the form of Rama. It takes the form of Krishna. And many avatars. Because Bhagavan is filled with love for his creation. And it is because of this love, he embraces everyone as Antaryami. He is witnessing, like that story of the two birds. The bird which is watching you eating all these worldly pleasures, that is Bhagavan, that is Antaryami. That's why he is coming with you. So love for Bhagavan, it implies our ability to love him back. And him means what? Vishwam. The entire Vishwam is Bhagavan. So that ability to love everyone, irrespective of the kind of relationship you are having with them, without expecting anything in reciprocation. Yattu pratyavakarartham phalam uddishya va punaha. without any pratyupakari ichha, when you do that, that is bhakti. It implies that bhakti has become our own very nature. Love has become our surupam. So surupānusandhānam, that is love. That is bhakti. What a fragrance is to flower. Yata punyasya karmano durat gandhovat yevam punyasya karmano durat gandhovati. Yata vrikshasya sampushpitasya. A tree which is filled with flowers, it can only give out fragrance and it does not expect anything. Like that fragrance of flower, bhakti or love for the Vishwam, which is Bhagavan, that is what a bhakta is. That is what love is for such a person, for such a devotee. It embraces all without heeding to his likes, personal dislikes. It is immaterial whether the other person loves you or not. Because there is no other, there is only Bhagavan. But you can think and feel about the well-being of others. And serve all in that spirit to begin with. Even if it is an ideal now, we have not discovered this as an experience. Enjoying the very expression of your feelings in that process. And that is what Bhagavan is doing to you by sustaining you with prana, with vayu in this pura, as sitting as a guru, guiding you. He loves to love for the sake of love. And that's why we have to love him. We all love him. That is why this famous commentator, Bhashyakara called Mallinatha, he is a commentator of Kalidasa's Raghuvamsha. He says, Ramavat achartavyam, natu Ravanavat. Why am I writing this commentary? Because I want to show to people that Rama is the one who has to be followed, not Ravana. Rama should be your role model. When you have Bhagavan Rama as your ideal, Ramavat vartidavyam, natu Ravanavat, not like some Rakshasa. So in the very beginning of Narayaniyam, by this very first phrase, Sandra Ananda Avabodhatmakam, the author introduces the subject to his readers by establishing the identity of himself with his ideal, which is Bhagavan Krishna, who is Brahman, and invokes that supreme power with these adjectives in that opening statement. The author starts this epic with the expression Sandranandavabodhatmakam by describing and defining Brahman as the embodiment of Sandram Anandam, never-ending joy. That is Sanatanam Anandam, eternal bliss, everlasting happiness. And also Avabodham. People will think that this Brahman is some innate, inanimate object. No, it is Avabodhatmakam. It is knowledge, unconditional knowledge, pure consciousness, awareness. That is what he is presenting as this Brahman. That is the very definition of Brahman that Bhattacharya gives. By using the word Sandram, Sandram means unique. Vishishtam, that is the meaning of Sandram. And Avabodham is pure awareness. And this also confirms that Bhagavan is Sarvajna. He has got unconditional knowledge. That's the meaning of Avabodha. Bodha is conditioned knowledge. But Avabodha is unconditional knowledge, unlimited knowledge. There is not even an iota of Maya or Ajnana in him. There is no doubt in him. It means Brahman stands beyond Maya and Prakriti. That's what he suggests with this Upasarga Ava. Even though he is engaged in this creation constantly by this Ikshana Kriya, by this witnessing, that's all he does. is an akarta. And Maya or Prakriti, they are jada, they are insentient. While Brahman is avabodhatmaka, is chetana, is consciousness, is awareness. So, in order to establish his sarvajñatvam, he puts in this adjective avabodha. Because whoever is this creator of this creation, whoever is this karta, he should have that avabodha, he should have that awareness, he should have the know-how of what he is creating. Just like a potter should know how to make a pot, how to do the work of creation. Only when he has that jnana shakti, he can have the kriya shakti. Then only he can execute it. That is why Bhagavan is avabodha. And he also knows why he has to do it. And only Parameshwara, only Guru Vairappan, who is the Jagat Karanam, and who is also the Jagat Karta, on all these counts, he is described as avabodhatmaka. And he is also anandatmaka. Like normally in the world, we go to work grudgingly Monday morning. But Bhagavan does not do work grudgingly. He is anandatmaka. He does it happily. He is pure joy, unalloyed, unconditional happiness. Pure happiness is different from other sorts of happiness or the sensual pleasures we enjoy every day. The happiness derived from sensual pursuits, it's short-lived. We know that by experience. We observe that. Our body, which has these 5 sense organs, Srotram, Chakshus, Sparshanam, Cha, the eyes, the tongue, the nose, the skin, the ears. These, when united with the corresponding sense object, Rupam, Gandho, Rasa, Sparsha, Shabdas, Chavishaya, Ami, the taste, the smell, the touch, and the sound, they give rise to the experience of short-lived pleasures. But these pleasures last only so long as the relationship between the sense and the sense object exists. When an eye sees a beautiful flower, a visually attractive object, it sends a message to the brain, which constitutes the sense, the mind. Mind is nothing but Andarindriyam, which is seated in the brain. And the mind enjoys it. The same happens when we hear some sweet music or experience a fragrant smell. The body is the prime cause of these experiences in the individual. It is the Upadana Karanam. It is composed of these 5 gross elements, Panchabhutas. Prathivyat, Tejo, Vayu, Akashaha, space, air, fire, water, and earth. And again the 5 subtle elements, Rupam, Gandho, Rasa, Sparshaha, sound, touch, sight, taste, and smell. These combine and become the objects of enjoyment, and it contributes to short-lived happiness of the experiencer, of the bhokta, of the pramata. The experiencer is tied to the object of experiences by this iron chain of kama, of desire, which is very difficult to break, because they are thriving in an ecosystem called vasanas. And every creature which gets trapped by its senses, it remains subject to their torment, which is known as samsara, the cycle of birth and death, being driven by its own karma. And any one of these senses, even one, is sufficient to cause downfall. Shankara says that beautifully in the Vedic Chodamani through the example of insects like a moth, the deer, an elephant, a fish, and a bee. He who has not controlled the sense, the body-mind sense complex, he who has not controlled his sense of vision, that is the eye, he meets with the faith of the moth that gets attracted to the brilliance of the sight of the fire and is consumed by that fire, burnt by it. And the deer is an example of how it can be trapped by mellifluous music, sound. The hunter's sound traps the deer with his music. And the sense of touch is the weak spot for a karenu, means an elephant. The gaja is caught because it goes in search for this karenu, the she elephant, in order to touch it, and unknowingly it falls in the ditch, in the hunter's trap. And the fish, it gets attracted by taste, by the bait, and succumbs to its taste buds and gets trapped in the net and dies. This is how these five senses, they cause destruction, and that is why they are called a trap. That's why it is called sensual pleasures, which are short-lived. And they are related to these five senses. But the moment such an external object, the source of the pleasure, is removed, that pleasure goes away. Vishayaha vinivartante. Niraharasya dehina. If you keep away from the object, they go away. This is true for any of these five sense organs. They are very temporary in nature. But on the other hand, the ananda of the Atman, of the self, this does not happen due to contact of an external object. It rises in you, swataha, by itself, without corresponding to the sense objects, which is unmixed with the objects, meaning unmixed with sorrow, with sadness. And that is the very nature of Atman. That's what he's trying to convey through this adjective. And how do we get to this? The basic eligibility, prerequisite for understanding this Atman or Bhagavan is purity of mind. Our great rishis have taught us that by cultivating this mind, which is to be indifferent to transient worldly pleasures, that's how you start cultivating that kind of mind and exercising effective control, vairagya and abhyasa, over sense organs, over mind, and performing one's duty, one's commitments, without attachments to the outcome thereof. And when you do this for a considerable period of time, you get this eligibility, which is called this chitta shuddhi, the purity of mind. If one focuses this pure mind on Atma, on Bhagavan, without being polluted by the interrupting thoughts of sensual pleasure, with single-minded devotion, with ananya bhakti, when one meditates on Bhagavan, on him, with this undivided attention, then one can realize this Sandra Ananda Avabodha. That is one's true identity with Bhagavan, the Supreme Brahman, the embodiment of joy. And by repeatedly doing this Aikya Abhyasa, by concentrating one's minds on Bhagavan, the sense organ and the senses and the mind, they subside. They come under perfect control. And in course of time, when one's punyam, when the past good deeds, when they bear fruit, one can tap that grace, that karuna of Bhagavan. And the bliss one gets at that time, that is beyond words. In that state, all types of kamas, vasanas, impulses for mundane pleasures, they are completely eliminated, destroyed. Bhasmasat kurute Arjuna. That's what Krishna says. Therefore, this limitation, this conditioning, this sorrow, which is the enemy of joy, Kamarupam Durasadam, which can never gain entry into the mind of a devotee, of a bhakta. Because the illusion that the body is the self, which is called as Dehabhimana, that has been terminated because of this Badhida Anuvritti. Because Brahmajnanam comes and does Badha to all that, vasanas. Hence, there is no break in his mind for the enjoyment of this Atmanubhava, this bliss, this joy, which is Swataha, which comes from the inside. And once such understanding, that realization dawns, one merges with his Ishta, which is Guru Ayappan, which is conveyed by this expression by Bhattadiri, Sandra Ananda Avabodhatmakaha. Swasti Prajabhyah Paripalayantam Nyayena Margena Mahim Mahisha Go Brahmanebhyah Shubhamastu Nityam Loka Samasta Sugino Bhavantu Sarve Bhavantu Sukinaha Sarve Santu Niramaya Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Makaschid Dukkha Bhag Bhavet Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om.